It's about time I made a video about this particular character. Now look, I don't actually hate Trent. I really don't. Hate is a strong feeling to have, and I wouldn't say that I hate him. I do, however, have some feelings towards him as a character. I'm still not quite sure if I can say I outright dislike him because I don't think I do, but I just have so many issues with his character. In my tier list video, I mentioned similar things with Trent and how an entire video of him would probably be coming soon. I'm going to get into Trent's character, the things he's done across the first 3 seasons, and how all of it is just so weird. Because Trent is a very weird character. Trent's archetype label is the cool guy, and in Camp TV, Total Drama's prototype, Trent is notable for being the only quote-unquote normal person in the cast. The cool guy moniker is just another way of calling him normal pretty much. As with all the characters in the original cast, Trent is just another example of a high school or reality TV stereotype, in this case, the one who's just a regular dude. That's at least how he is on the outside. He's smart, he's good looking, I guess. He likes and plays music, he's more laid back, and I mean besides that extremely long cranium of his, he looks just like any other dude. But Trent can definitely act out of character and be a complete psycho. I'll get there later, but the other major thing about Trent that goes without saying is his relationship with Gwen. I have my own feelings about this relationship, but it is one of the show's biggest plots. The goth girl and the normal guy, another kind of stereotypical pairing, and this one starts off right off the bat within seconds of them standing next to each other. That's all it took for them to have feelings for each other, and from that moment onwards, Trent and Gwen had an interesting, confusing, sometimes cute, and just infuriating storyline that took place over 3 seasons of the show. That's quite remarkable when you consider that Trent is just quote-unquote normal. What I mean by that is just by being a regular guy, there's probably not going to be a lot of personality displayed by him. Like, Trent needs Gwen a lot more than Gwen needs Trent, if that makes sense. And that's not really a huge knock on Trent, but more so that what that kind of character entails from the very start. But the writers were smart and made sure Trent wasn't just a complete bore. For one, he had a huge fear of mimes. In Phobia Factor, he was able to confront his fear and everything seemed to be going well, except for the fact that he forgot to dig Gwen out from being buried alive. This set the relationship back just a little bit, but not enough for the writers to really pay that much attention. Taking a step backwards to Not Quite Famous, the episode where Heather reads Gwen's diary to everybody, and one of the things she reads is basically how much Gwen is crushing on Trent. Trent's never explicitly named, but it's extremely obvious through Gwen's detailed writing that it's all about him. I mean, even Mr. Oblivious Cody knew it wasn't about him. This was the first little setback in their relationship with Gwen not really wanting to speak to him afterwards, but if it wasn't clear enough, they had feelings for each other and they knew it. Which is why the episode Up the Creek is so hilarious to me because of how odd Trent acts out. Like, what the hell is he doing just letting Lindsay lay her head on his lap? And he didn't want to stop that from happening either. And then, the moment that's forever stuck in my head is Trent threatening Cody with violence. Look, I don't think anyone is really going to be seriously threatened by this guy, but nonetheless, this interaction is just so weird to me. Cody tells Trent that Gwen has feelings for him, and Trent threatens him if he's lying, but how could this possibly be a lie? Like, everyone knows how desperate Cody is, so this is actually a huge step for him, but also, Heather already publicized what Gwen's feelings are, so none of this should even be a shock to Trent at all. Maybe he just has underlying anger issues, I mean, I don't know, but it was still just weird. And this isn't the only time that Trent has made a threat towards others, or well, at least trying to make a threat. In Brunch of Disgustingness, when the guys are trying to force him to eat after it was his idea to do so, he threatened them all with the fact that his father is a lawyer. Now, I don't know what the court system would think about a bunch of teenagers forcing another to eat some disgusting shit chef cooked, but I can't imagine anything would have happened. It's just a funny little threat that's out of nowhere, but it's like, what is your dad even going to do in this situation? Anyways, enough of Trent's weird threats, we need to go back to his relationship with Gwen. After several episodes with them getting along and spending time together, Gwen decides that it's time for her to be upset at him for leaving her buried alive. I have no idea why this was even brought up at all, especially since right after this, Trent says like 1 or 2 lines and Gwen is back to being in love. They were already in a good spot before this, so this just felt really unnecessary to me. But at least Trent has a W Riz, as the kids say, since that conversation turned around instantly. The next episode is when things get really interesting for the two of them though. After helping her in the challenge, Gwen and Trent share their first kiss in Search and Do Not Destroy. This seems like great news, but it's not great for Heather, who wants to put a stop to this. This is when Heather and Lindsay lure Trent to the dock, where Heather tells Trent about all of the horrible things Gwen has been saying behind his back. The same Heather that already told Trent about Gwen's feelings for him from her own personal diary. Any rational person would think, yeah, Heather, you're lying like crazy right now. Trent must be the most gullible person on this planet after Sting, because he starts believing what Heather is telling him. And then to make matters worse, Heather kisses him just in time for Gwen to see the whole thing, making sure their relationship is quickly ruined. This kiss becomes quite a big deal for a long time after this, but it just blows my mind that Trent could fall for this manipulation so easily. I know Heather is great at what she does, but there's no way that Trent should actually be thinking that any of this is true. So Gwen is heartbroken about this, and through a game of telephone, plan is set in motion to get rid of Heather, and then Trent after she wins invincibility. Trent's elimination is hilarious to me because Chris wastes absolutely no time in making sure everyone else knows they're safe, while Trent is stunned. The cool, normal guy with no issues whatsoever ends up getting voted out. He could not believe it, and when Gwen tells Heather to shut up, Trent actually talks back to her. Trent has now fully believed what Heather told him, and it's just insane to me how it's gotten this far for him, but it's then easy for him and Gwen to figure out Heather tricked them all. The plot armor here is just insane, but still, the fact that Trent really let this whole thing get to his head, and only just now realizes what was going on, it's insane. I'm sorry, but the guy is just stupid. But yeah, Trent is now gone after this, and he and Gwen are now apart from each other. After this, they still think of each other though. You know, Trent says he's in love with her while playing the losers, and he still holds a grudge against Heather, which is nice, except for the fact that he totally just let her play him like a fiddle. Moving along to the finale, not counting the longer special afterwards, Trent is determined to win back Gwen's trust. That's right. After the two of them already pieced together that Heather was the cause of the kiss and everything, and how they made up, Gwen now has a hard time trusting Trent because of that incident. It feels like things went a bit backwards here, but Trent does some insane things during this final challenge to make it all up to Gwen. I mean, in some ways I do sympathize with Gwen here, because how could you trust someone dumb enough to fall for one of Heather's obvious tricks? Nonetheless, Trent was going crazy in this final challenge, especially when he was carrying that boulder alongside her, and it all worked out in the end because the two of them became an official couple, wrapping up a whole season-long storyline between them. After all the weird inconsistencies mixed with the great times they had, they finally got to make it official. I mean, nothing could totally ruin all of this, right? Well, 2 days after Total Drama Island is Total Drama Action, and this is where Trent's character completely goes off the rails. Things seem to be going good for them at first as they are now official, but things quickly go wrong for them. Duncan and Gwen have similar interests and they begin talking a lot more, leaving Trent very jealous. Trent tries his best to insert himself in their chats, but he has no idea what they're talking about at all. Trent is still making a lot of sacrifices in these first couple of challenges for Gwen to show his love and loyalty, which is all great, but it's like he kind of already did all of this just to get her to go out with him, and things are now already bad. I can't put this all on Trent because frankly, I hated this. What was cool though was that Trent and Gwen were assigned as team captains, meaning they'd be competing against each other. I thought this was a neat idea, but it's pretty much already ruined for me in that the relationship was already going downhill before this, so this was just another way of speeding things up. Gwen chooses Duncan to be on her team first, which makes Trent even more jealous, so he chooses Lindsay, but he makes sure to call her beautiful.
I choose the beautiful Lindsay.
I guess Up the Creek really was just a peek into Trent's secret crush on Lindsay all along, if you ask me. Trent's jealousy doesn't let up though, and he constantly hates Duncan while Gwen assures him nothing is going on between the two of them. Trent probably should have had more trust in Gwen and their relationship, but by this point he was beyond saving. We all know where this is going. The 9 thing. Now, 9 is actually my favorite number. It's always been my favorite number, and shout out Mallory Bros for adding on to that reason. But Trent makes me want to hate on the 9 because all of this is just so bizarre. Because of his deteriorating mental health thanks to Duncan and Gwen just talking to each other, Trent starts doing everything in 9s. It's his lucky number, and this was more of a coping mechanism for him, as he revealed in the aftermath that it's his lucky number because of a memory with his grandmother. That still doesn't really excuse him from being a complete nutcase though, and the rest of the cast would agree. It's seen as more of a weird obsession by everyone, particularly by Gwen, whose opinion is influenced even more by Duncan, convincing her the whole 9 thing is because of the amount of letters in Gwen and Trent's names combined. Now this is my issue with the whole 9 thing. This was never something that ever came up before this, and I know, people point out that he was coincidentally the 9th person to arrive in Total Drama Island, but that doesn't say anything about his own personal obsession with the number. Now, maybe Trent didn't go under the same mental distress on Total Drama Island, but there were some moments where I think it definitely would have come up, such as after the whole thing with Heather. Now that Trent is obsessed with a number and Gwen, this drives him to start throwing challenges to help Gwen win. This advice comes from known dating expert Owen, who tells him girls like to win. He definitely took this way too far by sabotaging his own team, and like I said before, Trent has already done plenty with regards to sacrificing himself to help Gwen in challenges. Depending on the ending you watch, he helped Gwen win the first season. He shouldn't need to be throwing anymore, and really, he shouldn't have freaked out in the first place. But you know, jealousy will drive you to do wild things. I mean, I can't speak from experience, but I can clearly see from all the things Trent did. Eventually, it's all way too much for Gwen to handle, and she just has to break up with Trent. I can't blame her on that. He had become something he was not, but maybe this was the real him all along. He can't keep up that quote-unquote normal cool guy thing forever. I just hate that this was the direction the show took for Gwen and Trent. Sure, you could have them break up down the line, but this soon? The 2 seasons took place 2 days between each other, meaning they only dated for like a couple weeks? And they were only actually happy for maybe like a few days. To me, the whole thing between them in the first season almost feels like a waste if they were going to immediately break it off in the next season and pivot to Gwen and Duncan. Trent was just shoved to the side after trying for a whole season to make things work with Gwen, and it all ended with him being a depressed, jealous, obsessed freak. And then he gets voted out because he was throwing the challenges for Gwen. It's a sad sight, but it gets even sadder on the aftermath. Jeff had the idea of showing Trent a video of Gwen telling the Killer Grips to vote off Trent, which just completely shocks him. Trent is then crying and playing a song for Gwen. Speaking of, Trent's musical career is quite interesting. Judging by his audition tape, he couldn't have been that good at the guitar. Nah, but I mean, he actually was pretty decent at it. He could also sing, but these songs are Trent. Can we really be sure they're his? Remember when Bridget accused Trent of not writing his own songs? I mean, whether that's even true or not, I find that one of the most hilarious things said on the show. The more I think about it, the more I'm realizing Trent is kind of like Drake. Not exactly in the way Kendrick would describe him, but just walk with me. They're both Canadian, they're both like white women, they're both musicians, they both try to portray themselves as something they aren't at certain times when they feel threatened, and they've both been accused of having ghostwriters. I mean, tell me where I'm wrong. Anyways, yeah, Trent is just a total wreck after the breakup and at the aftermath, but in the following aftermath episode, he and Gwen are able to make amends and leave things on amicable terms. And because of the breakup, Trent suddenly became the top ladies' man of Total Drama. That still doesn't really make sense to me, but seeing the kinds of women that were largely after him, maybe it's not that crazy after all. And even in the next season, after all the rest of the stuff between Gwen and Duncan, Trent is able to be on good terms with Gwen, which is good to see. He was finally able to not be a jealous freak, but as a huge Gwen and Duncan hater, I would have understood if he did something completely outrageous. It's just wild to me to see how far Trent kind of fell after his elimination in action. Maybe even before then, but Trent was a part of one of Total Drama's biggest plotlines. Gwen and Trent are a massive part of the first season, they're extremely popular, and for all of that to just be crushed in the following season is rough. I have a lot of issues with Trent's character. I think the normal cool guy thing is a facade, as he was extremely quick to snap in a variety of ways. It just seems like he had to be this normal guy for Gwen to bounce off of, before for real just bouncing and going after Duncan. The crazy 9 stuff and whatever else just comes off as more inauthentic to me, but I see the reasons why those things ended up coming up in order to facilitate the quick breakup between him and Gwen, but I would have either just done that much later and actually let them be happy together for some time, or I wouldn't have done anything at all. Like I said before, I don't actually hate Trent. I just find him to be so goddamn weird. There really isn't a lot that adds up, but that all circles back to him being the normal cool guy, I think. Whether you believe in that or not. Trent is just such a weird character that went through his own weird arc as well. To go from being that cool guy in a big story being turned into a mental patient and forced away for Gwen and Duncan to become a thing is quite a sad turnaround. That, I think, is the quick synopsis of the weirdest character in Total Drama. Let me know down below your thoughts on Trent and anything I had to say in this video. Also, let me know down below what else you'd like to see me talk about on this channel. Like the video, subscribe for more videos, and yeah, thank you for watching.